Daniel, always believed my life with Emily was a tapestry of quiet perfection. We lived in a quaint Seattle suburb, our home a sanctuary of cedar and glass, where morning fog clung to the windows like a lover's whisper. Emily, with her auburn curls and eyes like storm clouds, was my anchor. We'd been married 8 years, our routines as familiar as the creak of our oak staircase. I worked as a software engineer, she as a curator at a local art gallery. Our evenings were spent sipping Pinot Noir, debating Klimt versus Kandinsky, or planning trips we'd never take. But beneath this harmony, something shifted. It began subtly, her phone glowing late at night, her laughter sharper, her gaze distant. I dismissed it as stress. The gallery was hosting a major exhibit, and she was consumed by it. Yet, the air felt heavier, like a storm brewing beyond the horizon. One evening, I found her in the kitchen, texting furiously, her face illuminated by the screen's cold light. "Work?" she murmured, but her fingers trembled. I nodded, ignoring the knot in my gut. The first clue came at a gallery event I attended to support her. She introduced me to Julian, a sculptor whose work was featured. He was tall, with ink-stained hands and a smile that lingered too long on Emily. Their banter was effortless, their shared glances a language I couldn't read. I shook his hand, feeling the calluses, and forced a smile. "Nice to meet you," I said, but my voice felt hollow. Emily's laughter rang out as she touched his arm, a gesture so casual yet so intimate it burned into my memory. That night, I lay awake, her breathing soft beside me, and wondered if I was imagining things. Love blinds you, doesn't it? It wraps you in warmth until the cold seeps through. I began noticing more. Her late nights at the gallery, her sudden interest in abstract art, her perfume lingering on clothes I hadn't seen her wear. I wanted to confront her, to demand truth, but fear held me back. What if I was wrong? What if I shattered our world over nothing? So I watched. I catalogued every anomaly, every moment that didn't fit. The knot in my gut grew, a parasite feeding on doubt. Emily was my everything, but I was starting to see her as a stranger. And Julian. His name became a splinter in my mind, sharp and unyielding. I didn't know then how deep the betrayal ran, nor how it would twist into something I'd never imagined. But I was already falling, spiraling into a truth that would unravel everything I thought I knew. The weeks that followed were a slow descent into obsession. I became a detective in my own life, scouring for evidence I both craved and dreaded. Emily's behavior grew bolder. She'd leave for meetings at odd hours, her excuses flimsy yet delivered with a smile that once melted me. I started checking her phone when she showered, my heart pounding as I scrolled through messages. Nothing overt, but Julian's name appeared too often, their chats filled with art jargon that felt like code. "Your latest piece is breathtaking," she wrote once. His reply, "Only because you inspired it." My stomach churned. I began tailing her, a shadow in my own marriage. One rainy Tuesday, I followed her to a loft downtown, a place she'd never mentioned. Through the window, I saw her with Julian, their silhouettes blurred by drizzle. They were laughing, her head tilted back, his hand brushing her cheek. It wasn't proof, not yet, but it was a knife to my chest. I stood there, soaked, until she left, her umbrella bobbing through the crowd. I didn't confront her, couldn't. Not until I understood the full shape of her deception. At home, I searched for more. In her office, buried in a drawer, I found a sketchbook she'd never shown me. Inside were drawings, raw, vivid, unmistakably Julian style. One depicted Emily, her form rendered with reverence, her eyes alive with a passion I hadn't seen in years. My hands shook as I turned the pages, each stroke a betrayal, each line a confession. The final page held a note in her handwriting. "For Jay, my muse." I slammed the book shut, my breath ragged. I started digging into Julian. His website boasted awards, exhibitions, a life of bohemian charm. Posts on X revealed his charisma, fans fawning over his latest works. One post caught my eye, a photo of him and Emily at an art fair, captioned, with my favorite curator. The comments were innocuous, but the intimacy in their pose screamed louder than words. I saved the image, my mind racing. Emily noticed my distance. "You okay, Dan?" she'd ask, her voice laced with concern that felt performative. I'd nod, forcing a smile, but inside, I was building a case. I installed an app to track her phone's location, hating myself for it but unable to stop. The data confirmed my fears. She was at Julian's loft when she claimed to be elsewhere. Each ping on the map was a nail in the coffin of our marriage. I didn't sleep anymore. I lay beside her, her warmth a mockery, and planned. I didn't know what I'd do when the truth was undeniable, but the need for justice consumed me. Emily had painted a lie, and I was peeling back the layers, inch by agonizing inch, to expose the canvas beneath. Living with Emily became a performance, a tightrope walk between feigned normalcy and the rage simmering beneath. I cooked her favorite risotto, laughed at her stories, kissed her goodnight, all while my mind screamed for answers. She seemed oblivious, her charm as disarming as ever. But I saw the cracks. The way her eyes darted when I mentioned the gallery, the way she clutched her phone like a lifeline. I wondered if she sensed my suspicion, if she was playing me as deftly as she played her role as the perfect wife. I decided to test her. One evening, I casually mentioned Julian. "His work's intense," I said, stirring my coffee. "You two seem to get along." Her fork paused midair, a flicker of panic crossing her face before she smiled. "He's talented," she said, too smoothly. "The gallery's lucky to have him." My pulse quickened. Her lie was a brushstroke, bold and deliberate, and I hated how effortlessly she wielded it. I escalated my investigation. At work, I used my coding skills to access her email, a line I never thought I'd cross. Most messages were mundane, but one thread with Julian stood out. They discussed a private project, vague enough to be innocent, yet the tone was too familiar, too warm. "Meet me at the usual spot," he wrote. Her reply, "Can't wait." I printed the emails, tucking them into a folder I kept hidden in my desk. Each piece of evidence was a brick in the wall I was building, one that would either protect me or crush us both. I visited Julian's loft again, this time in daylight. Posing as a client, I booked a tour through his assistant. The space was chaotic, filled with half-finished sculptures and canvases. Julian greeted me warmly, unaware of who I was. "Art's about truth," he said, gesturing to a piece that resembled Emily's profile. I nodded, my jaw tight, imagining her here, laughing, creating with him in ways she no longer did with me. I left with a brochure and a burning resolve. At home, I confronted Emily indirectly. "You've been distant," I said one night, pouring wine. "Is something going on?" She hesitated, then leaned across the table, her hand on mine. "Just work, Dan. You know how it is." Her touch, once my haven, felt like a transaction. I searched her eyes for guilt, for love, for anything real, but found only a polished mask. That night, I dreamed of a gallery where every painting was Emily's face, each expression a lie. I woke sweating, the truth clawing at me. She was slipping away, not into another man's arms, but into a world where I didn't exist. And I, Daniel, was no longer just a husband. I was a hunter, tracking the betrayal that would define my revenge. The deeper I dug, the more Emily's betrayal took shape, a grotesque sculpture carved from deceit. I began cross-referencing her gallery schedule with her phone's location data. The discrepancies were stark. She wasn't at client dinners or late-night inventory sessions. She was with Julian in his loft, in cafes, in places that weren't ours. I mapped these moments, pinning them to a timeline that mocked our vows. Each discovery was a wound, but I couldn't stop. The truth was my addiction. One afternoon, I found a receipt in her coat pocket for a hotel downtown, dated a week prior, when she'd claimed to be at an art conference in Portland. The charge was for a single night, a king suite. I stared at the paper, my vision blurring. I called the hotel, posing as a confused husband checking a billing error. The clerk confirmed the room was booked under Emily's name, with a male guest. "Anything else I can help with?" she asked. I hung up, my hands shaking. I needed more than fragments. I hired a private investigator, a discreet man named Carl with a knack for blending into shadows. His reports were clinical, devastating. Photos showed Emily and Julian at a park, her head on his shoulder. Another caught them entering his loft, her hand in his. Carl's notes detailed their routines: coffee at 10 a.m., studio visits, late-night walks. They're careful, he told me over coffee, but not careful enough. I paid him in cash, my savings dwindling, but money meant nothing compared to clarity. I confronted Emily in my mind 1,000 times, rehearsing words that never left my lips. Instead, I watched her live her double life. She'd come home, kiss my cheek, and talk about her day as if it were mundane. I marveled at her audacity, her ability to weave fiction so seamlessly. But I was learning her craft, too. I smiled, nodded, played the devoted husband while my folder of evidence grew. Emails, photos, receipts, a catalog of her infidelity. Julian's art became my obsession. I studied his portfolio, noting how his recent works mirrored Emily's essence, her curves, her gaze, her spirit. One piece, unveiled at the gallery, was a sculpture titled Muse. It was unmistakably her, a bronze figure with her posture, her defiance. The plaque credited Emily as inspiration. Guests gushed. I stood silent, my champagne untouched. She caught my eye across the room, her smile faltering for a split second. Did she know I saw her? Did she care? I began planning, though I didn't yet know what. Revenge wasn't a word I used. It was a feeling, a pulse in my veins. Emily had betrayed me not just with her body but with her soul, giving Julian what was mine. I would take it back, piece by piece, in a way she'd never forget. Patience became my armor, though it chafed against my fury. I couldn't act yet. My revenge needed precision, a masterpiece to rival Emily's betrayal. I continued my charade, waking each morning to brew her coffee, to ask about her day, to feign ignorance while my mind churned. She seemed relieved by my normalcy, her guard lowering as she leaned into her lies. I let her believe she was safe, that her secret was hers alone. But I was always watching, always collecting. Carl, the investigator, delivered a bombshell, a video. He'd installed a discreet camera near Julian's loft, capturing Emily entering one evening, her coat slipping off as Julian pulled her close. The footage was grainy, but their embrace was unmistakable, a dance of familiarity that gutted me. I watched it on loop, each frame etching itself into my psyche. Carl offered sympathy, but I waved it away. Keep digging, I said. He nodded, sensing the storm in me. I began infiltrating their world. I joined an art forum online, using a pseudonym to engage with Julian's fans. I learned his habits, his ego, his vulnerabilities. One post revealed he was pitching a major commission, a city-funded installation. Emily was helping him, their collaboration a public secret in art circles. I saved every mention, every photo, building a dossier that felt like a weapon. At home, I tested Emily's limits. I'd leave Julian's website open on my laptop, watching her reaction. She'd glance at it, her lips tightening, then change the subject. Once, I asked about the Muse sculpture. It's stunning, I said, my voice neutral. Who inspired it? She blushed, mumbling about artistic license, but her eyes betrayed her. I savored her discomfort, a small victory in my silent war. I started crafting my revenge, though its shape was still vague. It wouldn't be violence or confrontation, too crude, too fleeting. I wanted something lasting, something that would haunt her as her betrayal haunted me. I considered exposing her at the gallery, but that felt too public, too merciful. No, it had to be personal, a mirror to her deceit. I researched Julian's past, finding old ex-posts about a failed partnership, a scandal he'd buried. An idea sparked leverage not against him but against the life Emily had built with him. One night, she came home late, her hair mussed, her excuse flimsy. I poured her wine, my hands steady. Long day? I asked. She nodded, avoiding my gaze. I smiled, the predator in me stirring. She thought she held the brush, painting our lives as she pleased. But I was the canvas now, and I'd decide the final stroke. The cruelty of my plan was taking root, and though I didn't yet know its full form, I knew it would be exquisite. My life became a dual existence. The husband who smiled and the avenger who schemed. Emily's betrayal had carved a hollow in me, but I filled it with purpose. I spent nights in my home office, the glow of my laptop illuminating a growing web of plans. I wasn't just collecting evidence anymore. I was designing a reckoning. Julian's art, Emily's lies, their shared world. It would all be the scaffolding of their downfall. I didn't want to break them. I wanted to reshape them, to make them see themselves as I saw them. I deepened my research into Julian. Through ex-posts and obscure art blogs, I uncovered his ambition. The city-funded installation, a $200,000 project that could cement his legacy. Emily was his liaison, her gallery endorsing his proposal. Their collaboration was professional on paper, but I knew better. Carl's latest report confirmed they'd met at the hotel again, their laughter spilling into the hallway as they left. I didn't watch the new footage. The first had scarred me enough. Instead, I focused on leverage. I found a weak point in Julian's past. A decade ago, he'd been accused of plagiarizing a design, a scandal hushed by a settlement. The original artist, a reclusive painter named Mara, still lived in Tacoma. I contacted her through a burner email, posing as a journalist. She was bitter, eager to talk. "He stole my soul's work," she told me over the phone, her voice raw. I recorded every word, her story a weapon I'd wield later. Mara's sketches, eerily similar to Julian's early sculptures, were my first piece of ammunition. At home, I played my role with chilling precision. Emily's birthday was approaching, and I planned a dinner, inviting her gallery colleagues to keep up appearances. I watched her charm them, her laughter a performance for everyone but me. Julian wasn't there, but his absence felt louder than his presence. She thanked me with a kiss, her lips cold against mine. "You're too good to me," she said. I smiled, thinking of the folder in my safe, photos, emails, Mara's testimony. "Anything for you," I replied, my voice a blade she didn't hear. I began planting seeds of doubt. I left an article about art plagiarism on the kitchen counter, casually mentioning it over breakfast. "Sounds like a career ender," I said, watching her eyes flicker. She nodded, changing the topic, but I saw the tension in her jaw. I wasn't ready to strike, but I wanted her to feel the ground shift. My revenge was a symphony, and I was tuning the strings, note by note, until the crescendo would deafen them both. Control became my refuge. Every move I made was calculated, every word a thread in the web I was weaving. Emily and Julian thought they were the artists, crafting their secret world, but I was the puppeteer, pulling strings they didn't see. I started manipulating their environment subtly, testing their reactions. I sent an anonymous tip to the gallery's board, questioning the ethics of curator-artist relationships. It was vague, untraceable, but enough to spark whispers. Emily came home rattled one evening, complaining about petty politics. I nodded sympathetically, hiding my satisfaction. I met Mara in person, driving to her cluttered Tacoma studio. She was wiry, her eyes sharp with old wounds. She showed me her sketches, each one a twin to Julian's early work. "He charmed me, then gutted me," she said, handing me a USB drive with scanned originals. I promised to expose him, though I didn't mention Emily. Mara didn't need to know the full scope of my plan. She was a means to an end. I left with her trust and a clearer vision of Julian's vulnerability. Back home, I hacked into Emily's gallery email, a risk, but I was past caring. I found drafts of her pitch for Julian's installation, glowing with praise. I didn't delete them. Instead, I forwarded copies to my burner account, then planted a virus that would delay their system's backups. It was a small sabotage, enough to stress her without raising suspicion. She started staying later at work, her frustration palpable. "Tech issues," she muttered, unaware I was the glitch. I began engaging Julian directly, using my forum alias to comment on his ex-posts. "Love your work, but is it all original?" I wrote casual but pointed. He didn't respond, but his next post was defensive, a rant about haters. I smiled, knowing I'd rattled him. I also mailed an anonymous letter to the city's art commission, enclosing Mara's sketches and a note about Julian's past. I didn't expect action yet, just unease, a crack in his confidence. Emily sensed something was off. One night, she sat me down, her hands clasped. "Are we okay, Dan?" she asked, her voice trembling. I wanted to scream, to show her the photos, the sketches, the truth. Instead, I squeezed her hand. "We're fine." I lied, my heart a furnace. Her relief was almost pitiable, but pity had no place in me anymore. I was sculpting their ruin, and every lie she told, every moment she spent with Julian, was clay in my hands. My revenge was no longer a vague desire. It was a structure, solidifying with each step, and I could almost taste its completion. The gallery became my battlefield, a space where Emily's lies were displayed like art. I attended another exhibit, this time uninvited, slipping in among collectors and critics. Julian's latest piece dominated the room, a towering abstract that screamed Emily's influence, its curves echoing her silhouette. I overheard her praising it, her voice bright, her arm brushing Julian's. Guests didn't notice, but I did. Every gesture was a confession, every smile a betrayal. I sipped my wine, my face a mask, and catalogued their intimacy for later. I escalated my interference. Using a fake email, I contacted the art commission, posing as a concerned citizen. I attached Mara's sketches and a detailed account of Julian's plagiarism, citing public records from the settlement. I didn't mention Emily, but I hinted at conflicts of interest in the gallery's endorsement. The commission replied, promising a review. I knew it wouldn't derail the project yet, but it would cast a shadow, one that would grow. At home, I left more breadcrumbs. I accidentally sent Emily a link to an article about a curator fired for favoritism, claiming it was for work. She read it in silence, her face pale. "Interesting," she said, her voice tight. I shrugged, feigning ignorance, but inside, I was coiling the spring tighter. I also started following Julian's assistant on X, a young woman named Lila who posted about his schedule. Her updates gave me windows, dates when he and Emily would be alone, moments I could exploit. Carl delivered a new report, audio from a bug he'd placed in Julian's loft. The snippets were excruciating. Emily's laughter, her voice soft as she said, "You make me feel alive." Julian's reply was muffled, but his tone was possessive. I didn't listen to the full recording. I couldn't. Instead, I transcribed key phrases, adding them to my dossier. The folder was now a tome, heavy with proof, a monument to their deceit. I began sketching my revenge's final form. It wouldn't be enough to expose them. I wanted them to unravel from within. I imagined Julian's career crumbling, Emily's reputation tarnished, their bond shattered by the weight of their own lies. But it had to be personal too, a betrayal that mirrored theirs. I considered using Mara, perhaps luring Julian into a trap where she'd confront him publicly. Or maybe I'd turn Emily's colleagues against her, planting doubts about her integrity. The options swirled, each crueler than the last, and I savored the choice. That night, Emily slept beside me, her breathing steady. I stared at the ceiling, my mind a gallery of motives. She thought she'd painted a perfect lie, but I was the curator now, arranging her world for the fall. The cruelty of my plan was no longer a question. It was a promise, and I was ready to sign my name to it. Time was my ally, each day a chance to tighten the noose. Emily's stress was visible now. Circles under her eyes, her smile strained. The gallery's tech issues persisted, and the commission's review of Julian's project had sparked rumors. She didn't confide in me, but I overheard her on the phone, her voice sharp as she reassured someone, likely Julian. "It'll be fine," she said, but her tone betrayed her. I pretended not to notice, offering her tea, my kindness a weapon. I contacted Lila, Julian's assistant, under my alias, claiming to be a collector interested in a private commission. She was chatty, revealing Julian's mounting pressure, the commission's scrutiny, his fear of losing the project. "He's been a mess," she wrote. I probed gently, learning Emily was spending more time at the loft, helping him focus. I thanked Lila, my mind racing. Their desperation was my opening, a crack I could widen. I met Carl at a diner, where he handed me a flash drive. "Bank records," he said. He traced payments from Emily's personal account to a vendor tied to Julian's supplies. Small sums, but frequent, suggesting she was funding his work behind my back. The betrayal stung anew. Not just her heart, but our money, our future. I added the records to my dossier, each number a spark in the fire I was building. I began disrupting their rhythm. I sent an anonymous package to the gallery, a reprint of Mara's sketches, labeled Original Works. No note, just enough to unsettle Emily. She didn't mention it, but her mood darkened, her phone buzzing constantly. I also hacked Julian's website, embedding a subtle glitch that scrambled his portfolio images. Visitors complained on X, and he posted a frantic apology. I watched his followers dwindle, my interference a slow poison. At home, I pushed Emily's boundaries. I invited her to a weekend getaway, knowing she'd decline. "I can't, the project's at a critical point," she said, her excuse predictable. I nodded, hiding my triumph. Her absence gave me time to refine my plan. I drafted a letter, not to send but to perfect. A manifesto of her betrayal, listing every lie, every meeting, every dollar spent. Writing it was cathartic, a rehearsal for the moment I'd unveil her truth. My revenge was crystallizing. A public shaming that would strip Emily and Julian of their pride, their art, their bond. I'd use Mara's evidence, the commission's doubts, the gallery's whispers, all orchestrated to collapse at once. But it needed a personal twist, something to make Emily feel the weight of her choices. I didn't know the final stroke yet, but I felt its shape, sharp and unforgiving. As Emily slept, I stood over her, my shadow long. She'd woven a lie, but I was unraveling it, thread by thread, and the end was near. I stood on the precipice of action, my plan a machine ready to hum. Emily's world was fraying. She snapped at small things, her phone a constant tether. Julian's posts on X grew erratic, hinting at sleepless nights. The commission had delayed his project, citing concerns, and the gallery board was questioning Emily's oversight. My anonymous nudges were working, but I needed more than chaos. I needed devastation, a moment where they'd see their lies reflected back, jagged and raw. I orchestrated a trap. Using Lila's intel, I learned Julian and Emily were meeting at his loft for a final push on the installation proposal. I contacted Mara, convincing her to confront Julian at the same time. I fed her just enough, his recent work, the commission stakes, without revealing Emily's role. "He's doing it again," I said, my voice steady. Mara agreed, her anger a fire I'd stoked. I arranged for a local art critic, tipped off anonymously, to visit the loft simultaneously, ensuring witnesses. I also leaked Mara's sketches to an X account I'd created, framing them as lost works tied to Julian's early career. The post gained traction, art forums buzzing with speculation. Julian's defenders clashed with skeptics, his reputation teetering. I watched the chaos unfold, my laptop screen a window into their unraveling. Emily called in sick, a rare crack in her facade, and I knew the pressure was crushing her. At home, I prepared the final pieces. I printed my dossier, hundreds of pages, from emails to photos to bank records, and bound it like a book. I titled it Muse, a cruel nod to Julian's sculpture. I hid it in my safe, a relic for the moment I'd choose. I also drafted an email to the gallery board, ready to send when the time was right, accusing Emily of financial misconduct. It was a lie, built on half-truths, but believable enough to ruin her. That night, Emily came home late, her eyes red. "Rough day?" I asked, pouring her wine. She nodded, staring at the glass. "I don't know how much longer I can do this," she whispered. For a moment, I saw the woman I'd loved, fragile and lost. But the moment passed, replaced by the image of her in Julian's arms, her laughter in his loft. I touched her shoulder, my voice soft. "You'll get through it," I said, meaning something else entirely. I lay awake, the loft meeting looming. Mara, the critic, the ex-post, it was all converging, a storm I'd summoned. My revenge was no longer a plan. It was a force, unstoppable, and I was its architect. Emily and Julian would face their truth, not in private whispers but in a public collapse, and I'd be there watching as their world burned to ash. The cruelty was mine now, and I wielded it like a brush. The day of the loft meeting arrived, a gray Seattle morning heavy with portent. I'd set the stage. Mara, the aggrieved artist, would confront Julian. A critic, tipped off by my anonymous email, would witness it, and ex-posts questioning Julian's originality were gaining traction. Emily, unaware, was at the center of my trap. I stayed home, claiming a migraine, and watched the pieces move. Carl, my investigator, was parked nearby, ready to record the fallout. I sat at my desk, the dossier labeled Muse open before me, its pages a map of my vengeance. By noon, Carl texted, "It's happening." Mara had stormed into the loft, her sketches in hand, accusing Julian of theft. The critic, expecting a routine interview, was caught in the chaos. Emily tried to mediate, her voice shrill, but Mara's fury was unrelenting. "You stole my soul," she screamed, loud enough for Carl's mic to catch. Julian stammered, his charm crumbling. The critic left, shaken, already typing notes. I imagined Emily's panic, her world tilting as her lover's facade cracked. X exploded hours later. The critic posted a vague but damning thread. Disturbing allegations at today's studio visit. Questions of artistic integrity. Art forums amplified it. Mara's sketches circulating alongside Julian's work. His defenders faltered, his reputation bleeding. Emily called me, her voice trembling. "Something awful happened at the gallery," she said. "I need you." I drove to her, my face a mask of concern, but inside, I was soaring. She hugged me, clinging, and I let her, my touch cold as stone. At home, she recounted a sanitized version. A misunderstanding with an artist, Julian devastated. I nodded, offering tea, while my mind replayed Carl's audio. Her lies were flimsier now, her confidence frayed. I didn't push. I didn't need to. The city's art commission emailed her that evening, pausing Julian's project pending investigation. She read it in silence, her hands shaking. "It'll be fine," I said, echoing her earlier words, my voice ablaze. I sent the final nudge, an anonymous email to the gallery board, attaching bank records showing Emily's payments to Julian's vendor. I framed it as concern about financial irregularities. It was a half-truth, but enough to spark scrutiny. The board would dig, and Emily's role as curator would unravel. My revenge was no longer a spark. It was a fire, consuming their world. I watched her sleep, her face etched with worry, and felt no pity. She'd painted me out of her life. Now, I was rewriting the canvas, stroke by vicious stroke. The gallery became a crucible, its polished walls hiding a brewing scandal. The board's investigation into Emily's finances was swift, fueled by my email. Whispers spread, colleagues questioned her judgment, her ties to Julian. She came home each night drained, her excuses thin. "It's just politics," she'd say, but her eyes betrayed her fear. I played the supportive husband, cooking dinners, listening, all while feeding the flames. Julian's project was officially shelved, the commission citing credibility concerns. His ex-posts grew silent, his followers abandoning him. I orchestrated the next blow. Using my forum alias, I leaked a detailed exposé to an art blog, combining Mara's sketches, Julian's settlement records, and screenshots of Emily's glowing emails about his work. I didn't name her outright, but hinted at a curator's bias. The blog post went viral, shared across X and art circles. "Plagiarism and favoritism?" one comment read. "This gallery's a mess." Emily's name surfaced in replies, her reputation eroding. She saw the post, her face paling. "It's lies," she whispered, but she didn't meet my eyes. I attended the gallery's next event, a fundraiser meant to salvage its image. Emily was there, fragile but composed, her smile a brittle mask. Julian's absence was conspicuous, his sculptures removed. I mingled, dropping subtle barbs. Heard about the plagiarism scandal, I said to a board member, feigning ignorance. Hope it doesn't hurt the gallery. Her frown told me the seed was planted. Emily caught my eye, her expression unreadable. Did she suspect me? I didn't care. I was untouchable, my rage cloaked in civility. That night, I finalized the personal strike. I discovered Emily kept a private journal, hidden in her office. I'd read it weeks ago. Pages of her feelings for Julian, her guilt, her dreams of a life with him. It was raw, intimate, a betrayal in ink. I scanned select pages, blurring my involvement, and prepared to send them to her closest colleague, Sarah, under an anonymous guise. The email would frame it as a concerned find, exposing Emily's heart without implicating me. I hesitated, my finger over the send button. This was cruel even for me, but her words, "Julian sees me," burned in my mind. I clicked send. Emily's world was collapsing, and I was the architect. The gallery's trust in her waned, Julian's career was in tatters, and soon, her colleagues would know her deepest truths. I lay beside her, her breathing uneven, and felt the weight of my victory. It wasn't enough to ruin them publicly. I needed her to feel the betrayal's echo, to know the cost of choosing him. My revenge was a mirror, reflecting her lies, and I was almost ready to show her the final reflection. Sarah received the journal pages, and the fallout was immediate. She confronted Emily privately, but word spread, gallery staff whispered about her affair, her bias, her betrayal of professional ethics. Emily came home sobbing, her facade shattered. "They think I'm a fraud," she said, collapsing into my arms. I held her, murmuring comfort, but my heart was ice. She didn't know I'd sent the pages, didn't know I'd orchestrated every blow. "We'll fix this," I lied, stroking her hair. Inside, I was counting the hours until the final act. The gallery suspended her pending a full audit. The board's email was curt, citing concerns about conduct. Emily read it aloud, her voice breaking. "I've lost everything," she said. I wanted to scream that she'd lost me first, that her choice to pour her soul into Julian had started this. Instead, I made coffee, my silence a weapon. Julian, meanwhile, vanished from public view. Ex-posts reported he'd left Seattle, his loft abandoned. I tracked him through Lila, his assistant, who mentioned he was broken. Good, I thought. He deserved it. I prepared the final piece of my revenge. A private unveiling. I invited Emily to dinner at our favorite restaurant, claiming we needed a night to reconnect. She agreed, desperate for normalcy. I also invited Sarah and 2 board members, framing it as a chance to clear her name. They were skeptical but curious, drawn by my promise of new perspective. Emily didn't know they'd be there. I spent the day arranging a package, the dossier, Muse, now complete with the journal pages, photos, and Mara's sketches. I'd present it to them, not as her husband, but as a whistleblower, anonymous until the end. That afternoon, I visited the gallery one last time. Emily's office was empty, her desk stripped. A colleague mentioned she'd been asked to resign. I nodded, feigning shock, but my pulse raced with triumph. On my way out, I saw Julian's Muse sculpture in storage, its bronze dulled. I touched it, imagining Emily's pride in it, and felt nothing but contempt. She'd chosen this idol over me, and now it was junk. At home, Emily packed a bag, saying she needed space. "I'll stay with a friend," she mumbled, avoiding my gaze. I didn't stop her. It was too late for reconciliation. As she left, I opened the safe, pulling out the dossier. Tonight, at dinner, I'd lay it before the board, Sarah, and Emily, revealing her lies in excruciating detail. She'd see herself as I did, faithless, exposed. My revenge was no longer about justice. It was about truth, raw and unforgiving. I was ready to hold up the mirror and watch her break. The restaurant was dimly lit, its cedar walls a cruel echo of our home. I arrived early, the dossier hidden in a leather portfolio. Sarah and the board members, Clara and Tom, were already seated, their faces guarded. Emily arrived last, her eyes widening at the unexpected guests. "Dan, what's this?" she whispered, her voice tight. I smiled, guiding her to her seat. "A chance to set things right," I said, my tone warm but laced with intent. She sat, uneasy, as the waiter poured wine. I began with pleasantries, thanking them for coming. Then, I slid the portfolio to the center of the table. "I've been investigating," I said, my voice steady. "Not as Emily's husband, but as someone who cares about truth." Emily froze, her glass trembling. Sarah leaned forward, curious. I opened the dossier, revealing its contents page by page. The photos of Emily and Julian, the bank records, Mara's sketches, the journal entries. Each item was a hammer, striking her silence. Clara gasped at the journal pages. Tom's jaw tightened at the financials. Emily's face drained of color. "Dan, why?" she choked out. I didn't look at her, addressing the others. "She used gallery resources for personal gain, favored an artist with a questionable past, and betrayed her role." My words were clinical, but they cut deep. Sarah shook her head, tears in her eyes. "Emily, is this true?" she asked. Emily stammered, her denials weak. "It's not what it looks like," she said, but the evidence was undeniable. I saved the worst for last. A recording from Carlsbad, Emily's voice saying, "Julian, you're my everything." The table fell silent, the words a guillotine. Emily sobbed, her hands covering her face. Clara stood, excusing herself, her disgust clear. Tom followed, muttering about legal action. Sarah stayed, staring at Emily with pity. "I trusted you," she said, then left. Emily turned to me, her eyes wild. "You've destroyed me," she whispered. I met her gaze, unflinching. "You destroyed us first," I said, my voice low. The waiter cleared the untouched plates, oblivious to the wreckage. Emily grabbed her coat and fled, her sobs echoing. I sat alone, the dossier open, its pages a testament to my victory. The board would fire her. Julian's career was ash. Their bond, if it survived, would be poisoned by shame. I'd expose them not just to the world but to each other. Their lies laid bare. The cruelty of it was exquisite, a mirror reflecting their betrayal back tenfold. I paid the bill, my heart heavy but unyielding. I'd won, but the cost was a hollow I'd carry forever. Emily didn't come home. She texted once, a single line, "I'm gone." I didn't reply. Her absence filled the house, a silence louder than her lies. The gallery fired her the next day, the board citing gross misconduct. Posts buzzed with gossip. Emily's fall, Julian's disgrace. The gallery scrambled to recover. I read them dispassionately, my revenge complete. Julian had left for Portland, his loft foreclosed, his name toxic in art circles. Mara, vindicated, sold her sketches to a collector, her story a footnote in the scandal. I packed Emily's things, her clothes, her books, her perfume that once drove me wild. I found a photo of us in Paris, laughing under an umbrella. I burned it, the flames curling the edges, a final release. The dossier, my masterpiece, I kept in the safe, a relic of my rage. I didn't need it anymore. Its work was done. Friends called, asking about the drama, but I deflected. This was my story, not theirs, and I'd written the ending. Weeks later, I saw Emily at a coffee shop, alone. Her auburn curls dulled, her eyes haunted. She didn't see me. I watched her sip her latte, her hands unsteady, and felt no triumph, only a strange grief. I'd wanted her to suffer, and she had, but it didn't heal me. My revenge was cruel, precise, a blade that cut both ways. I'd stripped her of her career, her love, her pride, but I'd lost the man I was, the one who believed in us. I sold the house, the cedar and glass too full of ghosts. I moved to a small apartment, my life leaner, sharper. Work filled my days, coding a distraction from the hollow. I didn't date, didn't seek closure. Emily's betrayal had reshaped me, and my revenge had sealed it. I checked X one last time, finding a post from her. A vague apology, a plea for a fresh start. I didn't comment. She'd rebuild or she wouldn't. It wasn't my story anymore. Sometimes, I dream of the gallery, its walls lined with my dossier's pages, each one a scream. I wake, the silence heavy, and wonder if I'd do it again. The answer is yes. She chose Julian, gave him her soul, and I took it back, piece by piece, until their world was ash. My cruelty was my truth, a mirror held to her lies, and though it cost me everything, it was mine. I live with it, the ashes of us, and I carry on, a man remade by vengeance, forever marked by the love I burned.